Now, I'll be the first to say that I don't particularly enjoy horror games. I don't really like being scared, and I don't really like being locked alone in an asylum filled with decapitated bodies. I think these are reasonable requests, but for some reason, I was drawn to Outlast for its recent PlayStation 4 release. Walking away from the end credits is both a breath of fresh air, but it's also extremely satisfying that I, as a person, survived that nightmare. Outlast is easily one of the scariest games I've ever played, and if you're a fan of horror games, you'll love every second of it. Outlast's greatest strength is its atmosphere. You play as Miles Upshur, a journalist who is investigating the Mount Massive Asylum. From the moment Miles steps inside, he's greeted with a dying SWAT officer telling him to get out, and psychotic inmates who want to chase him around. You see, in Outlast, Miles can't attack. The only defense he has against any inmate is the ability to hide and vault over small obstacles. To add to this, a majority of the asylum is dark, and you'll need to use your night vision camera to see where you're going. All these aspects combine to create a harrowing gameplay experience. In a way, the gameplay is somewhat similar to something like Amnesia. You'll spend a lot of time hiding and peeking through locker doors, watching crazed inmates search for you. You may be walking down a dark and dimly lit hallway only to have the power go out and the cackling of a murderer getting louder. It's moments like these where the tensions are at their highest, and for me, it's a test of willpower. With the player not being able to attack, there's a definite feeling of helplessness that usually isn't prevalent in video games. And the camera. Don't get me started on the camera. With probably half the asylum being without power, you'll be relying on your night vision very heavily. The problem is you'll be lucky if you can use your camera for a few minutes without changing the battery. However, this contributes to the aforementioned helplessness and really adds to the terror when you're being pursued in the dark. As Miles, you'll discover quite a few unsettling scenes. For the sake of spoilers, I'll just say that Miles' little adventure into the Mount Massive Asylum leaves you uncovering some very cryptic and very graphic experiences. I was always wondering what would be around the next corner, and in general, the story has much more thought put in it than a standard horror game. Seeing as how you play as a journalist, you also have the ability to record what you see with your camera. Recording interesting environments lets you get into the head of Miles and read his reactions, so to speak. That's not to say you'll grow attached to the characters or anything, but the general premise behind everything meshes quite well. Outlast, despite releasing on PC last year, takes full advantage of the PS4 hardware. Outlast runs at a very smooth frame rate and is very graphically impressive. There are a lot of interesting lighting effects, and shadows actually have an effect on the gameplay, since there are moments when you'll have to track the movements of inmates through their shadows. The characters, while not quite as detailed as the environment, are still frightening. For a downloadable PSN game, Outlast looks wonderful. As any piece of horror media, sound is a crucial aspect of creating and breaking the tension. Outlast is, for the most part, a fairly quiet game, which makes it all the more ghastly when you hear footsteps behind you. The music that is there consists mostly of horrifying strings, slowly getting louder and louder as the pressure intensifies. There are quite a few jump scares as well, with inmates popping out from behind corners and grabbing you. Outlast is not perfect though. The AI of the enemies in Outlast are especially stupid. After the first few encounters, it's pretty easy to learn where to hide in order to avoid detection, and you'll be picking up the patterns of the inmates pretty quickly. Inmates never seem to check the spot that you're hiding in unless they physically see you enter it. Outlast also has an extremely short campaign. Realistically speaking, the average player can probably run through Outlast in 6 or 7 hours, and that might even be a little bit generous. It is very linear, so there's not a whole lot of exploration to be had. However, if you're like me, you'll have to take plenty of breaks so you don't have a heart attack. Despite its shortcomings, Outlast is a wonderful game for horror fans. It features a unique story, gripping gameplay, and an immersive atmosphere. If you're a fan of horror games, you need to play Outlast, preferably in the middle of the night with surround sound. If you aren't a fan of horror games, well, you could actually just try out Outlast for free in the month of February, that is this month, with a PlayStation Plus membership, so I highly recommend you do that either way. Thank you for watching our review of Outlast on the PlayStation 4. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, you can pick up Outlast for free this month with PlayStation Plus. I also recommend you check out our YouTube channel. We have plenty of content including reviews and podcasts. You can click this button right here to subscribe to us. Lastly, make sure you point your browser over to JumpToGamer.com for more gaming reviews, previews, news, and more.